All right. Do you want to kind of talk about what we want to say first?
Gotta say the thing.
All right.
Ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Three.
Hello there.
Welcome to the second episode of Star Boys. I'm Stevie.
I am Luca.
And today we are focusing on one of the best, if not the best character of the new sequels, Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren. I am very excited for this. How about you?
I'm super excited. Done a good amount of research. Have a bunch of things I want to talk about.
Yes.
Okay, let's start us off.
So, first of all, I actually want to talk about kind of what our plans have been for some of our podcasts. I think a really good idea, or like an idea that I had was like character breakdown. So
Yes.
we're gonna try it today with Kylo Ren, which I certainly agree with Stevie with the fact that he is probably the best character arc of the sequel trilogy. And recently we just got the first two issues I have on my computer here of Rise of Kylo Ren. And it's just a very interesting story. And now that we have Rise of Skywalker, we know where he ends up in the end.
Also, we have to add, just in case, this is going to include spoilers,
Yes.
as Kylo Ren's arc does finish in The Rise of Skywalker, and so we will include spoilers with our review of him.
Let's how about we start off by a little bit of a let's say kind of a rating of a Kylo Ren character in the grand scheme of things. Like what did you like? What didn't you like about him? Just lay it on me.
Okay, so when we were first introduced to Kylo Ren, I immediately liked him. Because remember, in Force Awakens, he does one of the coolest shit you've ever seen in Star Wars, where he actually stops a laser from coming out.
Yes.
The blaster bolt, that was sick. That's something we haven't seen. I'm sure it's been in comics stuff, but we have not seen that in any of live action.
Yes.
Or even, I think, animated. I'm not even sure.
Yeah. I mean, and this was Force Awakens was still before Rogue One, right?
No. Oh, wait, it came after. Yeah, it came after.
Yeah.
4. Yeah,
Yeah. So I know in Rogue One we saw Darth Vader at the very end. He stopped all those blaster bolts, and obviously that's sick. But showing that just shows like the power of Kylo Ren, and especially his lineage. You know,
Yeah.
He comes from Han Solo, and he comes from Princess Leia, who's a Skywalker. So one of the most powerful bloodlines in the Force, and I just think that he is such a well written character.
Yeah, he's done
out of everybody, you would expect like somebody like Rey or like Poe and Finn to like all kind of be that main storyline, which they are.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see how the antagonist of the series has a very like
antagonist is well developed.
Yeah. Is so very well character arc starting from, well, obviously we didn't know too much about him, especially up until the release of Rise of Kylo Ren, but just if you just watch the movies Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and then Rise of Skywalker, I think a lot of people will agree that he's one of the best written characters.
Yeah. So the problem with Rey is that up until the Rise of Skywalker, her sort of like her power, where her character was just kind of like, how is this possible until the Rise of Skywalker? Because it really didn't make any sense. She was just strong with the Force, like immediately, like we saw
a scavenger.
Yeah, just a random scavenger who's extremely strong with the Force.
Right.
Doesn't make too much sense, but as her character developed in the Rise of Skywalker, it made more sense.
It made a lot more sense.
But Kylo Ren had his whole character develop. Like, First Awakens, we learn where he comes from, like where his family is, and how he sort of becomes more evil. Like, we see, like, they just give us a brief, like, talk about what happened to him coming Kylo Ren, and then we see his character grow more and more throughout the saga, throughout the trilogy.
And that's something that I like more about Kylo Ren versus Rey, especially just really when it comes to movie characters. For me personally, in a series like Star Wars, where there's a 3-movie trilogy, when you're able to take a character, and throw us in the middle of his story. Let's just say, like in Force Awakens, when we see him slaughtering the village.
Yeah.
And it just throws us right into the middle of his journey. So we don't know anything of his like beginnings. We don't know if he started off like being evil or being on the dark side, which now we know that he wasn't. But we'll talk about it in a little bit. But personally, I just like how you can arc a character like that, and go from being the biggest antagonist to being the saving grace, I guess, of the trilogy, in Rise of Skywalker. And I don't know, how powerful do you think he is on a spectrum of like in ranks of Luke and Anakin, Rey? You know, how powerful do you think he is?
I think he's definitely. He's got to be. He's somewhere around Rey. Like, he's extremely powerful. Yeah. He's done some powerful things with the Force, but I don't think he's reached. He could have. Perhaps he could have reached the high tier of Luke,
right?
Anakin. Maybe he could have done that, but because his life did end in the Rise of Skywalker, we didn't see that. But I think he was extremely powerful. I'm not sure if his strength maybe got stronger when he refused to be Kylo Ren anymore and became Ben Solo,
right?
Or did he lose power with that? What do you think?
That's a tough one because I know like there's that whole like the dark side, you can unleash your full potential and like you don't have to hold back because you're giving into your hatred and your desire and everything like that. But I think in terms of him as like a person, as Ben Solo / Kylo Ren, he was able to become more powerful in my opinion. And I'm sure that he could have done it when he was Kylo Ren, but when we see the scene where he just like annihilates the Knights of Ren, like, and that's something that we see in issue 2 of Rise of Kylo Ren, where Luke Skywalker is able to beat the Knights of Ren when the leader is still a man named Ren. And I think that it shows that he kind of is like up there with Luke at that point, because
okay, that's fair.
Because you know, it's kind of like almost like a parallel, showing his journey, and then he comes back to the light, and he's able to defeat all the Knights of Ren. So
very true.
I think that, and I love that scene.
Yeah,
like I think that might have been my favorite scene from Rise of Skywalker. Just the whole dyad in the Force. I think that was like one of the sickest.
And dude,
one of the sickest.
This shit.
Exactly. Yeah. The whole dyad in the Force, I think, is like such a cool concept, and it's really cool how they made it canon. But I don't know, has it been in Legends? I don't know.
So it's not called dyad in Legends, it's just called force bond, so it's a more simple thing. I think dyad is supposed to mean it's a stronger force bond, right. But force bonds have been like a pretty, I wouldn't say prevalent, but they've been a part that's noticeable, where force bonds, like how it's called Kylo or Ben and Rey, like, we're stronger together. That's what force bonds essentially do. Sometimes what you do in the Force can affect others the same way it affects you. Right. Sometimes it could link your fates. Like, say, if you get hurt, their person gets hurt. Yeah. So it can be really strong. I think this was probably one of the strongest Force bonds that we've seen. In Star Wars.
And that's part of the reason why I thought that like we were talking about power. I think he's equal with Rey. I think he'd be equal with Rey.
He has to at least be equal with Rey. Yeah,
because that whole dyad in the Force, I think there is a line where they talk about the dyad, and then they say that they're like, it's similar to them being kind of equals in the Force. But I definitely think that Kylo is up there, especially Luke being his master, and then Snoke being his master, but in reality we find out that it's Palpatine. So not only do we have a Grand Master of the Jedi Order training him, we also have one of the most powerful Force users in
Not even just
across the board, to train him. So, and that really shows his true power. And as you go through the comic, I have it here on my computer. We're shown that he is contacted by Snoke very early, as early as his teenage years, and throughout his Jedi training. Even I believe he starts training with Luke when he's 10 years old.
When he's pretty young,
I think he was like 10 years old, and we see that basically 1-2 years later in the comic. Snoke is already in his head. Snoke is already planning.
So this was actually
scene.
something I was going to talk about.
Okay.
So what my thoughts about how Kylo Ren really turned to the dark side, I think because he was a Skywalker, the dark side is just a possibility. Like, you have like the ability to be either strong or strong in both sides of the Force. But since he was a Skywalker, he was able to be infected by the dark side easily. So what I have noticed is that his whole life, he was really just like infected with the dark side by Palpatine. Like, he did all these things. Like, the voice of Snoke in his head was obviously just Palpatine. Mm-hmm. And him talking, him showing the dark side for the Force with Vader's helmet, that was just Palpatine again. So this whole time, his ascension to the dark side was through his manipulating. Okay, he would have like, it was really by him. Of course, like, falling to the dark side isn't the hardest thing to do. Yeah. But with the manipulation that Palpatine did to him, it like made it just easier and easier for him to fall to the dark side, as I said.
And I believe that I'm not sure exactly who it was, but there was a time excuse me, where Leia did not tell Ben, well at that time Ben, that his grandfather was Vader. She was just kind of like waiting for the right time to get to Vader, or to get to the whole exposing him to the side of his grandfather, and like letting him know that even though he was like evil, he was dark side, like he didn't have to be that way. But there's a segment in time where somebody exposed it to him, and during this time he felt very conflicted, especially because the fact that the dark side kind of like ran in his family. Like even though Luke is never really like harnessed the dark side,
we all have remotes, so
we know that like in Return of the Jedi, he uses Force choke. I mean, like he uses the dark side, and he's able to harness its abilities but maintain his light. So it's always like present. It's always there for him. So at that point in his life, I would just imagine that he was just very like conflicted between light and dark, and then almost pretty much being lied to by his own mother, and then his father, Han Solo, still being kind of like that
smuggler.
Yeah, it's just a smuggler at that point still, right? Yeah. And I think that this really played into him becoming Kylo Ren, and we've seen this before. The whole like kind of Anakin and Anakin feeling as if like the Jedi betrayed him by like lying to him, and I don't know. I just see like the connection there. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. So it's actually something I was going to talk about as well. Okay. So I had a thought yesterday when I was just looking about a bunch of stuff. So in the previous Legends before Disney bought canon, there Han Solo and Leia also had another son named Jason Solo, who pretty much went down the same path. So I had a thought that those who follow the path of Vader follow the path of lies and redemption. Right. Because that's what happened. All these were lied in their life. They all had these very deceptions that really like shook them to the core, and it tampered with them in a way that they were easily to fall to the dark side. But they all had the chance to be redemption. Darth Vader did it. I said Darth Vader. Darth Vader became Anakin Skywalker again. Yep. Kylo Ren became Ben Solo again. Jason Solo as Darth Caedus came back to Jason Solo again. So it's the path of darkness that's strong and very evil, where you do some evil things because you want to do a good thing. So that leads you to a path of hurt and eventually redemption.
Yeah. One thing that I did want to ask you about, the whole, I believe we get it in Last Jedi, where Luke decides to, light his lightsaber over Ben, while he's still in like his training academy.
Yeah.
And what do you think about Luke's decision to do that? Like, what? Why?
I get that. I'm not sure if Luke was ever, his intention was ever to really kill Ben. I feel like he felt the dark side, and like the way he felt it in his nephew was something that he wasn't sure of. Like, it was something that was so like eluding him that it was really weird that he didn't know what to do with it. And in response, he did his lightsaber, but I don't think he even meant to do that in the first place.
Right.
Like, it was almost like out of fear that he lit his lightsaber, just not entirely on purpose, and just in response to this strange dark side that developed in his nephew. So I don't think he actually meant to kill him. I've heard somewhere that he never really meant to kill Ben. So, yeah.
And I agree with that. I remember seeing or reading something about how Luke was able to see the light in Anakin, but when he looked into the force of Kylo, all he really saw was darkness, and he couldn't really see kind of the light. And I think Luke feared that, and ultimately that's why we see him go into exile, because he feels like he failed. I mean, Ben was able to slaughter all of the other students, right? Is that correct?
So, as we see in The Rise of Kylo Ren, that when he burned down the temple, he didn't actually kill the rest of the students.
Okay.
So, he actually, the rest of the students actually tried to, like, stop him. I'm not sure if, so it shows us just a few students. I'm not sure if those were his only students, but I think in the burning down the temple, he didn't actually kill any students. I'm pretty sure that's what it was said to be. But we don't know for sure if he will kill in the comic series. Okay. It's very possible that he will.
Right.
There's
only 2 issues out right now.
Yeah, at the end of the second issue, they confront them. The apprentices confront Ben at the end. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. So, but you then you think about it. I feel like it's partly Luke's fault.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think he definitely felt that by wanting to go into exile.
Yeah, he felt responsible.
He felt responsible for that. But if Luke hadn't, you would expect that a Jedi Grand Master would handle the situation a little bit differently, in my opinion. Yeah. We have like the likes of Mace Windu, where his alternative to Palpatine was just to kill him, right?
Yeah.
But Anakin stopped that. But I think it's kind of similar to that. But it kind of just frustrates me. I don't know. Yeah. I've been thinking about it, and if Luke could have handled that more, what's the word?
Just could have been wiser. Yeah. Anything really.
Yeah. And actually was able to communicate with Ben. I think there was potential there for him to not become Kylo Ren. No. But obviously, that doesn't really matter, I guess, on the grand scheme of things, because what happens. So it's not like, ever go back and change that. But I just think it was very easily preventable from Luke, and that's a reason why I thought that it was a nice part of the storyline, because it justifies Luke going to exile.
Yeah.
And I think it's very similar to Yoda going into exile, going to Dagobah.
Yeah.
Because he failed. He tried to stop Palpatine. He just couldn't. There was just nothing that he could do at that point. So, into exile I must go. Very similar to that.
Yeah. So I really wonder, we talked about the last episode, how Palpatine really affected, all of Star Wars. So it really makes me think, what if Luke couldn't really see the light in Ben? Because what's it called? Palpatine was blocking off that part from him seeing that. What if it really can all be affected by him? And it really just screws my head. Because all of this, the whole 9 movies, were orchestrated by this one guy. All of it.
And it's hard to believe that, like, that part. And here's why. I think that if he's really that powerful, that must mean that Palpatine is just significantly more powerful than every Jedi. Well, at that point, Luke. But why would he be able to block showing his the light in Kylo to Luke? And shouldn't Luke be powerful enough to even see past that? I mean, there's a bunch of, like, you know, misconceptions and deceiving from Palpatine, and I think that's largely why he's a good. Not only is he very powerful with the Force, he's very he's always like 3 steps ahead, kind of thing. He's so good at planning things out step by step.
He was the one responsible for setting up a clone armor being made just so that later it could kill all the Jedi.
Yeah.
That was all him.
Yeah.
He manipulated Jar Jar to give him more control of the military. Let's see. He became Supreme Chancellor and then killed his master right after that.
Yeah.
He did all of this just working for it. And the whole sequels, he wanted Rey to take his place.
Yeah.
All of it was just for them.
And then on top of that, he's really good at adapting to his plan.
Yeah.
Because he was able to see that Kylo or Ben and Rey had a dyad in the Force. And he says 2 restores 1, the true Emperor of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And this guy is just so much more powerful than everybody
ridiculous.
else that it literally took one of his own bloodline to defeat him.
Yeah.
So does that mean, like, this showing that to me, does that mean that he really couldn't be defeated by a Skywalker? By Ben? Let's say Kylo was the one instead of Rey, right? And he's not a direct descendant of Palpatine. Would he even have been powerful enough to?
I don't think one person's power enough to defeat him.
Yeah.
Not just one person.
Yeah.
As we've seen, when one person tries to fight them, they can't do it by themselves. It takes just at least 2 to even stand a chance to really take him down.
Yeah. And then there's that whole he doesn't even like using lightsabers, but yet he's a master in all 7
he's
forms.
mastered all 7 lightsaber forms.
Yeah.
And he just chooses to use the Force.
Yeah. So it just shows the scheme of how powerful he is. And if Kylo were the one to survive in the end, or, well, let's just say during that scene, that very last scene where Rey is trying to stop the Force lightning, and she has the 2 lightsabers. Let's just say that was Kylo. I just don't know if he would have been powerful enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
What do you think about the justification of his death in Rise of Skywalker?
The justification. That's hard to say. I think, like, maybe his path as a Jedi to have, like, to give sacrifice.
Okay.
Maybe that's what it was. Because obviously, like, he lost his way from a Jedi.
Yeah.
And goes on to the Knights of Ren, all of the First Order. All of that.
Yeah.
So maybe it was, like, to end his way. Maybe he was just trying to end his, his story in a right way. He felt like the only thing he could possibly do maybe is sacrifice himself to finish the story all around. Maybe that was it.
I could see that. And I could get behind that. But I also feel as if it wasn't it wasn't 100% necessary.
Yeah, this was me trying to justify it.
Right.
I'm not actually saying that I didn't want to die. I did not want him to die.
Like, I didn't want Rey or Kylo to die.
No.
but if we're being honest, I really was hoping for the Skywalker that was rising in this movie,
Yeah.
as the title alluded to.
I think everybody wanted that to be.
Were to be Ben. And, I think that would have gave me a better closure to the Kylo Ren storyline, in my opinion. Especially from reading these comics now and showing where he started, especially showing where he started as a Padawan of Luke. It just kind of makes me a little bit, sad.
Yeah.
To know that he had to go out that way. And I think symbolically, it was great.
Very strong.
It was awesome, especially how Leia and Ben disappear into the Force at the same time.
Yeah, they both came one for the Force at the same time.
And I think symbolically it was excellent.
Yeah, it was great.
It was great, but in terms of necessity of the sacrifice, it's just kind of unfortunate that it had to be written that way. But
what if it was just because Leia died that they thought oh, maybe he should die too, just because? That'd be unfortunate. I would really hate if that was the reason why.
I would too.
Absolutely, I would hate that.
And that's a whole nother topic. But if they had Leia or if they had Carrie Fisher for this movie, I feel as if
things would definitely be different.
That could definitely affect Kylo's storyline.
I think this whole movie would have been way different.
Would have been changed, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But, yeah. Anything else you want to talk about in terms of Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren?
Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren. Not much. Just last thing before we go on break. It's just the Knights of Ren, unfortunately, were wasted again for the second time because they weren't even in it's called The Last Jedi. So that's just fortunate. I mean, in the visual guide they talk about it, but that's not really what we want. Yeah. Honestly, even I'm super glad to get comics about it, but still, they're this very interesting part where they talk about it. It's from the comics. They're pretty much a dark side cult. That's what they are.
Essentially, yes.
They pretty much worship a lightsaber.
Yeah.
Ren is a lightsaber that they pretty much worship, and it's kind of weird.
And then it's even explained, they're not trained by any...
No, they're not.
Any Force user, any person that has used a lightsaber, they
just have the ability to tap into the dark side. That's pretty much all it is.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to, what's it called, personify the dark side. They're supposed to be ravagers, just monsters that destroy. That's pretty much all they are. That's their whole thing.
And I think it's so unfortunate that they couldn't write them in better, because they had some sick scenes. There were some cool scenes in Rise of Skywalker where they're just panning across them, but they're just posing. They don't have any lines of dialogue, don't they? No. So
it's dumb.
Yeah, I just don't understand why it wasn't better utilized. Yeah. And we see in the comics that it's they could be used so much better. They're
interesting. There's so much you could do with him. Yeah. We don't really get to see much of dark side cults anywhere. Yeah. So it'd be actually interesting to see what they could do with it.
I would love to see a movie based off.
I definitely think they could show.
Yeah, based off the Knights of Ren and their journey to being led by Ren and then being meeting Kylo or Ben.
I take that over a Rebels sequel.
Yeah,
which is supposed to be in production. So that's Disney for you, but
Rebels is just it is what it is.
It's not the same as Clone Wars, but. Okay, welcome back.
Welcome back.
So now that we've had that talk about the character of Kylo Ren, we're going to talk about more about his dark side. Yeah. What drives him to be Kylo Ren.
Yeah. So we'd like to start off with reasons for why he really becomes Kylo, and the fact that He's lied to, as we stated earlier in our podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
He's lied to about almost so many different things.
His whole life.
His whole life, and being exposed to the fact that his grandfather was Darth Vader, and becoming this big realization that he was one of the biggest and baddest Force dark side users in the galaxy at that time. It must just like rock your soul, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that Leia never even tells him about this until like way later in his life.
Yeah,
and
I'm not sure when.
Even I, as a normal person, if I were to find out something that drastic about something in real life, like you'd
be pretty angry.
You'd be pretty angry, yeah. So it's pretty justified, I think, for him to have this big conflict in his soul because of that. What do you think about that, though?
Yeah. Him being lied to really just screws with him because, like, it gets to your head. Like, why would these people lie to me? Like, these are the people they're supposed to care about me,
right?
And they're lying to me. This is like the biggest thing in my life that like someone could lie to me. Right. Oh yeah, your grandfather, he kind of like was the worst person that like pretty much ever lived. Yeah, like he did things that were terrible. He slaughtered thousands of innocents. He didn't care. He just did it because he was evil and hated himself, and so he did the worst things possible.
Yeah. And then we could go on to what his name is, Ben Solo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the comic, they point out this really like interesting thing. So Ben Solo's name is Ben Solo has been lied to his whole life, and so his name is kind of like a lie. He's named after Obi-Wan Kenobi as Ben, but Ben was his fake name that he used to hide his identity.
Yeah.
And Solo isn't actually Han's true last name. It's another cover name. So his name is pretty much a lie, another lie that was given to him.
Yeah.
So that's something crazy that I'm pointing out. That's kind of, oh, Lord.
Yeah. And this just like plays into the fact of how much he like hates his father.
Yeah.
And we all know in Force Awakens, at the end of Force Awakens, he kills him. And I think this is like, as much as I hate to see Han Solo die, I thought this was very cool in terms of like a kind of an opposite to Anakin and Luke.
Yeah.
How it's his father who's pursuing him, and kind of like, if you get what I'm saying, like it's it's Darth Vader going after Luke and trying to turn him to the dark side. But in this storyline, it's the son going after the father, and it's because his son hates him so much for being this person, this kind of fake person to him, and being like just a smuggler, and never wanting to really change from that. It's really just a big buildup of hate and anger and everything that has to do with the dark side. So I just find it really cool to show that kind of swapped storyline.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all this really builds to his dark side. So what I thought of, Darth Vader, the reason why he was so powerful is that he truly hates himself more than anything. He was just so full of hate. He hated himself for what he did to his fellow Jedi. What he killed Padme for. That's what he thought. He was betrayed by his master. He failed his master. He did all these things. His mother died.
Yeah.
He was so filled with hate that it drove him to be so powerful. And it was crazy that once he was... The only way that he could have done that is when he let go of his hate because of his son. That was the only thing that really brought him back. Mm-hmm. But Kylo Ren hate it's different. His hate really is the shadow of like his family, because he lives in the legacy of Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Anakin Skywalker, and Leia Organa. The few most influential people in the galaxy, like pretty much ever. They've done these crazy things. So he really just hates them so much for that. They put this huge shadow that it's going to be hard for him to ever come out from. Like, let's see. So in the comic, they actually say, like, he gets in a starfighter and he escapes. and those who are chasing him say that he is the son of one of the galaxy's best pilots. And it goes to show just like how they do it. Like it's all around him. Like he won't be able to escape this. And so it grows to his hate. And there's a comic where Kylo goes to actually enslave a planet, and then he goes to kill a Zillo beast. A whole gigantic Zillo beast. Remember that?
Yeah, from Clone Wars.
Yeah, gigantic creature. That Darth Vader was like, I'm not going to do this. He refused. He said, no, I'm not going to fight this. And Kylo was like, oh, he didn't do it? Yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to do it. So he goes into it. He goes into the mouth of the creature, gets swallowed by it, and like slashes his way out. Yeah. All because like he hates Vader for what he did for that.
Yeah.
He wants to outdo Vader. He wants to be better with Vader. He wants to finish what he started. He wants to do all of that. And it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's all
crazy.
just collectively. Like he's just so angered and pain and full of hate that he lashes out that way.
And can't we say, I guess, a good word for that would be a little contradictory. And I say that only because in the movies, he has this sense of worship for Vader. I mean, he has the burnt helmet of Vader, and he always says, grandfather, I'll finish what you started. But he also hates the fact that he has to be overcast by that. Like the fact that existed in the past and he has to be something like that also drives his hate.
That's kind of like someone who has like a difficult relationship with God. Like, I love you, but I hate you. Like, you've done all these things in my life. You made me this way. You did all of this, but I still somehow worship you. It's sort of like an interesting thing like that. The same sort of relationship where he looks up to Vader, but he hates him somewhere deep.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I don't know if George Lucas meant it to be this way, but Star Wars really reflects biblical stories. Just like, especially the whole, Anakin being born of the Force.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little bit, this is a different topic, but I think it's very interesting how it could reflect that way.
Yeah.
Anyways, Kylo really just, I felt like he needed to be more, if he could be accepting of who he was and understood, and I really think the fact that the hate started, I mean, we keep revisiting this, but it is the lies.
Yeah.
And it sucks because that means that in the grand scheme of things, him being a big dark side user really comes from Leia and Han just never telling him the truth.
Yeah.
And that sucks, I think.
It does suck.
And it just makes me feel a lot of different emotions, but
so
it plays into the reason why I love Kylo Ren so much.
That actually reminds me, so I'm watching The Act on Hulu. You ever heard of that?
No.
So it's about this girl, and like she lives with her mom, and apparently she has all these illnesses, but she doesn't. Her mom, her whole life, just lied to her that she has all these things. She put her in a wheelchair. She can walk.
Right.
She has like, what's it called? Seizures. Like none of this.
Right.
Like her whole life is just a lie, and then in the end she kills her mom.
That's actually that's very alike.
Yeah.
That's almost exact reflection.
It's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Anyways, what do you think about the whole throwing us into his story arc of being right then and there of being a essentially a Sith Lord, being Kylo Ren? Would you have liked to see the trilogy go, or the Kylo Ren storyline go, from him being good to being bad to being good again, like we saw? Or do you think you would like it better to how it is, just him just being bad and then just becoming good right there at the end?
Well, I do think they did it the way they did it in part to kind of like echo Vader's story in the originals, because at first, like for the longest time, we didn't get to see how Anakin was as a Jedi. We just got him as Darth Vader, the ultimate evil.
That makes sense.
So I think that's partly why I think I'm okay with it like that. The sort of like echoes Vader's footstep and finish what he started. But I think it would be very interesting to see like how he was younger in the Jedi, and maybe how we saw it in the prequels, how he's corrupted to the dark side. I think that would have been interesting. I wonder though if it just would have been like a whole rehash of Anakin's story, because that's essentially what happened in the prequels to a trilogy, to the original trilogy. It's just showing him his whole arc, his entire arc in that case. So would it have been necessary to do that again, to get that whole...
That's true. I could see that. Although I feel like it would have been like really cool to see, I guess, more flashbacks, flashbacks of him. For example, what we see in these 2 issues that we have right now of Rise of Kylo Ren, where we kind of see, we see him right then there becoming Kylo Ren, but it's also showing us flashbacks, like him going to the Jedi Temple, and they show us his first encounter with the Knights of Ren.
Yeah.
And I would have really liked to see that. And there you go. Like we were talking about earlier, the underutilization of the Knights of Ren. That's another way they could have really, like, that would have been perfect. Yeah. Like, I think they could have shown, it would have been really cool to show Ren himself, the leader back then, and kind of coercing him to becoming Kylo Ren and turning to the dark side. But then also, it would have been cool if they wrote that into him being controlled by Palpatine as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think that could have just been a better showing of where he comes from and how he becomes that way. Especially because as a viewer of Force Awakens, I remember thinking, well, his uncle is Luke Skywalker, his mother is Leia, his father is Han Solo. These people aren't there. No way would have made him go to the dark side, fall to the dark side.
Yeah, when you think about it, like, it's hard to see like how he could fall to the dark side just from like thinking of Force Awakens.
Basic knowledge of,
because we don't know much about the character yet.
Right.
So it's so hard to conceive that like this character can just fall from grace when he's got all these like good role models. But like, it's nice to see like how somebody like their influence doesn't work as well as it should. It's good to see that across the whole trilogy, like how it doesn't actually work for them.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
And it would have been, I think it would have played a lot better into his, what's the word I'm looking for? Like his fall, his, it would have just, I feel that it would have made more sense in terms of storyline to show those. I don't think they needed to show, like, if they go back and they make a whole movie based off, let's just say it's a prequel-esque movie, and they show him all the way through to becoming Kylo Ren, I think that would be cool, but very unnecessary. Yeah. Now we're getting the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, so I'm sure we're not going to get anything like that. Yeah. But if that were to happen, it just would feel unnecessary, because the whole story of him going there could have been shown in 1 to 2 scenes in Force Awakens. Possibly even they could have improved audience reaction to Last Jedi with little flashbacks of Kylo as maybe a young teenager, a kid, training with Luke. I think that would have been awesome. I mean, my reaction to seeing Luke train Leia was just like insane, right? Oh. So imagine if not in Rise of Skywalker, but earlier in Last Jedi or Force Awakens, we had little segments of seeing Luke and we saw young Luke and we saw younger Luke and Kylo Ren and Ben Solo train together. I think that would have been
really cool. So like, remember like how at the end of The Last Jedi, Luke, his I don't know what you call it, like spectral form, because there's like not exactly like we know what it is.
Right.
So like he goes to like pretty much fight Kylo. What if like we got like visions of the past where like sure like Luke taught him lightsaber combat. Yeah. So what if we saw just like visions of them fighting, but we see the side of like Ben who's just training with Luke, not angry. He's just training. He's learning, but then saw Kylo with hate of his old master. That could have been amazing.
That would have been so cool.
Yeah, that would have like we would have saw that, and like we saw what's called how Luke didn't fail Ben at first, and then Kylo who was failed by Luke. We could have saw that.
Imagine how good Last Jedi could have been if we started the movie with, let's say we didn't get any flashbacks in Force Awakens. We just didn't know anything about the background of where Kylo came from. But at the beginning of the movie, we started to get little scenes, just very like minuscule scenes of Luke training Ben. And then kind of a parallel to that in the present time of Kylo doing those same type of things with hatred and anger. Just similar to the way that you're talking about the fight. Yeah. But leading up to that fight and just showing that one scene of boom, boom, flashing back from Ben training with Luke, Kylo trying to strike down Luke on what's that planet called? I'm forgetting right now.
I don't know.
I mean, it's on the Star Tours ride at Disneyland. Yeah. I just can't remember it. Anyways, so you guys know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I just think that could have been such an easy way to play in the background of Kylo Ren, background of Ben Solo, and showing and at the same time improving the storyline.
Yeah.
And people at that point already thought, I already thought that Kylo Ren was one of the best written characters of the movie.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that could just only exponentially make it better. That's a great idea that you had right there, though. Good job with that one.
It's just that's one thing where like Star Wars, it belongs like people who really care about it, who know about it, and know like the potential. Right. So Rian Johnson, he's not a bad director.
No, not at all.
Knives Out, Looper, like they're all great movies, but he's best with his own stories, like making his own story. Because Star Wars had so much to work with that he kind of had to work with everything. If he had his own, it could have been better. Yeah. But since there's so much else to do with it, it wasn't just for him, which it's fine. It's fine. I mean, it made The Last Jedi. Last Jedi got mixed reviews. It's fine. It's in the past now. We can't do anything about it. So we just had to work with it. But, is that Star Wars would have been done better. Star Wars deserves to be in the place where people can do the most with it because they know what they can do with it.
Exactly. Yep.
When Disney does anything to like change it, it's because they have their own sort of like corporate reasons to change it, do it the way they want. Yeah. But when you care about Star Wars enough and you want to see it, you know what they can do with it, it's different. You can do so much more, like that idea I just had. Yeah. And all the Star Wars fan films, all the books and stuff, like, they can do so much more with it.
Yeah. That's one thing I think would be very interesting. If one day in the future, obviously, these films have huge budgets and they never want to take the opinions of normal people. Let's just call people people like us, people like anybody who loves Star Wars. But I know for a fact that there are ideas out there that would have gone down so solidly with not only just the Star Wars community as people, Star Wars fans, but people who just want to watch a good standalone movie. Mm-hmm. There are ideas out there that could have gone down very well, and it would be very interesting to see a fan film get a big budget and that budget be basically made into a real film.
Oh, that let's see, Star Wars Theory, Darth Vader fan film.
Exactly. There you go.
That's exactly yeah. It's great. It's great. You've seen it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's a great fan film, and all the fan films I've really seen of Star Wars have been great.
Yeah. Like, for example, there was just an Obi-Wan fan film that just came out.
I'm not sure I've
recently.
seen that.
I haven't seen that either. I just saw all my recommendeds for YouTube. Apparently it's pretty good, though.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. There was a Darth Maul fan film where Darth Maul just fights a bunch of princes and like acts like Darth Maul.
I've heard of that one.
It's really good. It's very interesting to watch.
Yeah. In terms of now, we don't have Kylo Ren as an evil force, and he became good, and we all know what happens. Where do you think the next villain will be?
Next villain.
Because I've been hearing a lot of rumors, and they're just rumors, but there's a lot of Old Republic. What people are saying, next movies are going to be Old Republic.
So I think that could be interesting. So in the books I've read about Darth Bane, so he was part of the Brotherhood of the Sith, but opposing them was like a Jedi army. But when I was reading it, it was kind of like they weren't acting exactly like Jedi would. They were acting like an army of Jedi would. So it'd be interesting to see if like it focused on like a character like Darth Bane, focusing on the Sith, while these outside forces, which is supposed to be good, like your perspective of the good guys not necessarily being the good guys.
Right.
Which obviously Star Wars hasn't really done yet. So it could be an interesting way to go.
That could be very interesting. Especially when you said that, I just instantly think of Anakin going, from my perspective, the Jedi are evil.
Yeah,
They
definitely.
betrayed me, they lied to me, you know.
Yes,
The
the
whole
Clone
thing.
Wars even does that too, where they go into Separatists, where the Separatists are actually like just normal people that don't want to be part of the Republic because they think it's changed. Or even, do you finish Clone Wars yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, so there is...
But I know most of the story. But
yeah,
yeah.
so there
Anyways,
is
go.
a Jedi who turns into Order because it's like they've changed. And that's a big arc, so that's pretty much at the end of the show. Like, there's a big arc of how this Jedi wants to rebel because they don't believe that they're the same anymore, that they've changed in a negative way. So it'd be interesting to see a movie where they focus on the truth of the Jedi, where if they're actually the peacekeepers that they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they're peacekeepers, but they go out extremely powerful with lightsabers to keep the peace, which seems contradictory.
And I have a perfect thing to bring up, but yeah, it's going to take me a second, so sorry. But I saw something on Reddit the other day about... Here it is. So it's from Dooku Jedi Lost, I believe, and... This is him and his perspective talking about the Jedi Order.
Oh yes.
And this is I believe I talked to you about this earlier.
I've heard about
but
that. Yeah.
Let me read this to you. The Jedi's order's problem is Yoda. No being can wield that kind of power for centuries without becoming complacent at best or corrupt at worst. He has no idea that it's overtaken him. He no longer sees all the little cumulative evils that the Republic tolerates and fosters, from slavery to endless wars. And he never asks, why are we not acting to stop this? Live alongside corruption for too long and you no longer notice the stench. The Jedi cannot help the slaves of Tatooine, but they can help the slave masters.
Yeah.
And I think this is perfect for that. That's just exactly what we need to see at this point, because I think that's just the perfect twist on who the Jedi are, who the Sith are, and it just like will just throw everybody for a doozy.
Yeah.
I think
So. Okay, so we are finally back.
Hello.
So we are going to continue off where we were talking about. So we're talking about how the Jedi aren't exactly the total savior peacekeepers that they seem.
Mm-hmm.
And so recently, I think maybe it was just today or yesterday, I saw a Star Wars Fever video of how an old Sith master actually, what he did. The Sith, a lot of time, were just, this wasn't Legends, this is not canon anymore, but this is just the example for the Jedi. So at some point, this Sith master decided that I can't really do much to the Jedi anymore because it's just us. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip an entire like hole in the Force, the dark side of the Force. And so he did that actually. But the Jedi saw it and they were like, no, this isn't a big deal. This is not anything. We don't really need to be concerned with this.
Right.
Because the Sith aren't gone anymore. Because at that point, the Sith war with the Jedi had ended and they believed that was the end of the Sith. No more Sith survived. Mm-hmm. And so, like you said, they have become complacent. Mm-hmm. So it really shows how the Jedi aren't as great as they should have been. Even this was 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago. Yeah. They were still not as they should be. They have lost their way.
Yeah, and I think that just going back to the whole Kylo Ren aspect of our podcast today, it really just plays into that. Like, the storyline of Anakin, the storyline of Kylo, it's just plays into the fact that why did the Jedi become so ignorant or naive to the fact that that there was this okay, so here's my issue with that, or not issue, but my counter to myself with that. Mace Windu, he knew.
Yeah.
Like, he knew, like, and from the beginning, they were always, like, to Anakin, he was too old, he was too,
everybody saw it coming.
Everybody saw it coming. They knew, they sensed it in him, but yet they allowed it.
Still happened.
And, I mean, obviously, that was in part forced to, Qui-Gon really pushing for it, but besides the fact that, the Jedi just... It seemed to have been very naive to these two Padawans that then became some of the biggest and worst forces in Jedi history. Yeah, and you're just like sitting there and you just need to understand that Jedi aren't all 100% good. And especially the fact that in the prequels we see them get way too involved with politics.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be peacekeepers.
Yeah,
not politicians.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we see in real life.
Yeah,
people who try to be charitable people and good people in the spectrum of just society, no. but then they choose to get too involved with politics, and then you're just like, well, and politics is always corruption, in due part to being involved with corrupt individuals and dealing with that whole aspect and new side of things. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you can continue if we're going to keep talking. I want to check the camera real quick.
Kylo really is the epitome, I believe, as I just stated, of why the Jedi actually need to be more complacent, or be less complacent. Sorry.
Definitely not more.
Yeah, less complacent, and that aspect, like, or
more complacent.
Yeah.
But there's a droid army.
Yeah.
So that kind of like reminds me. So in the Old Republic, the Mandalorian Wars were about how the Mandalorians went on a crusade to conquest all these planets, and the Jedi were like, "Hold up, let's wait. Yeah. Let's just wait.
Yeah.
All these people are dying. All these planets are being lost. But let's just wait.
Yeah.
Let's wait.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Let's wait." And they kept waiting. Until Rev, he's like, "I'm not gonna wait. This is stupid," and he goes off and do it. So it shows the teaching of the Jedi are just.
Yeah.
They're not right. Holding to traditions like that, it doesn't work.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. But in terms of where we can see the future of villains, let's just say, with air quotation marks, if nobody saw that, I think they could definitely turn it and spin it to it being the Jedi being portrayed as evil. And I think that would be an excellent
We can
twist.
even talk about this on a future episode because there is actually plenty of lore that I could use to really talk about.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on that we could easily do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's going to be a good end for this episode.
Yeah, I think
so. It's been a little longer than an hour, I think. So great.
All right.
So this was a fun second episode. We loved character Kylo Ren, obviously. Adam Driver really just kills it.
Yes, I love Adam Driver.
Adam Driver really is. I think he's kind of like Hugh McGregor of the prequels.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Because there's in what's it called in each of the trilogies, really, there's a standout character in each.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford as Han Solo.
Yep.
Hugh McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Adam Driver as Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
I think that's just the fate of Star Wars.
And overall, I think I could speak for both of us. Kylo Ren was our favorite character from the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
He was just so well written, so well portrayed by Adam Driver. Just
fantastic.
10 out of 10 character for me. 10 out of 10 character. Anyways.
Yeah, and also we discussed maybe the future villains of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which would be interesting. So I think we will probably continue this in another episode where we discuss what it could be. In another episode, I want to actually talk about what you should really align with yourself as a Force user. A Sith, a Jedi, or something else. That's something that I really think would be good and interesting.
Okay.
So let's talk about.
We can do that?
Yeah. So that is it. Thank you for watching or listening. We will have another episode next week. And we are the Star Boys. And that is all.
Peace.
Bye. Also, we forgot to mention that we are on social media. So if you'd like to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, obviously if you're watching this on SoundCloud and or YouTube, please follow us or subscribe.
Like the video if you can.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
It takes 2 seconds.
Yeah, and all the sharing, all this stuff, we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We appreciate any of you that have listened to our podcast so far and that you're involved in it. And don't forget, if you also have any suggestions, we have an email that will be down in the description of the video.
Yep.
It's just going to be star.boys with is.podcast@gmail.com. And if you send a suggestion, we will read it and consider it for a future podcast.
Other than that, find us on socials at Starboys for Twitter and
Boys,
Instagram.
Starboys. It'll also be in the description and on our channel.
Yes.
So if you're interested in seeing that, we do tweet stuff about it. We do plenty of stuff. And yeah, that's all for our social media and where to interact with us. And once again, we are the Star Boys, and that has been it.
See you next time.